the Chiefs and their fans and the region celebrate this Super Bowl win. Kurtis Seaboldt of 810 WHB in KC is kind enough to join us. First off, have you gotten any sleep? Because, your station started the postgame show, when Westwood One signed off. So I'm curious, has anybody from SportsRadio 810, Kurtis, even gone to bed yet?
I caught a few winks last night. I came home from the party I was at and rewatched the last 6 minutes or so, those last 3 touchdowns, and because you never can watch stuff like that when you're around a bunch of other people. So I sat on my couch and I watched that, and I looked at Twitter for a while, and I got to bed 1 a.m. Central Time, which was about 6 hours ago. And so not much. I mean, our station's been on the air the entire time, and it's similar to what we did when the Royals in the World Series in 2015. So, no, most of the people in this town have slept very little and are very happy to say that.
Yeah, I'm looking at your Twitter page, and I love it. You've got a picture from October 10, 1980, and then another one from October 10, 2014. My guess is you're going to have to update that and have a 50-year gap between pictures on it now. But just talk about we break down the game. I get it, Kurtis. Talk to me about being a Chiefs fan last night in the fourth quarter. What was that party like when the fourth quarter started? And just kind of walk us through the comeback from the eyes of a Chiefs fan.
Well, it was very quiet. I'll preface this by saying that the year I was born, in 1966, my parents and my 2 older brothers lived in an apartment complex in Kansas City, a suburb called Raytown, called Somerset Village. It has happened. Several members of the Chiefs lived there during the regular season. Back then, you didn't have the money to buy a nice house here, the nice house where you lived in the off season. Legend has it Len Dawson held me as a baby, so I've literally been a Chiefs fan my entire life. Growing up, hearing all the stories about those great Chiefs, I always wondered what must that have been like. And last night, I got to find out what that was like. And the party I was at was incredibly quiet, and I had actually written something to the effect of, Patrick Mahomes had picked a bad day to have the worst game of his short career. He got no help from his teammates, and he'll use this as fuel, and they'll be back in this game. And then 3rd and 15 happened. That play is going to go down in Chiefs history. There's a lot of them from this season, but that 3rd and 15, standing in the pocket, hitting Tyreek Hill for 40-some yards, then they punch it in quickly. All of a sudden, it's 20-17, and you start thinking maybe they can do this, because the Niners are not the Titans of the Texans. This seemed impossible at that point. Then they get the stop. Okay, that was one more thing, and then they get in again, and suddenly, amazingly, they're in the lead. This is not a comeback that I saw coming. The first 2, maybe I saw possible. This, I didn't. And then to turn it around and get the stop on 4th down. And then when Damian Williams hit that hole, and you knew he was gone, that's when you knew, my God, the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. And the place I was at just came unglued.
What do the Chiefs mean, not just to Kansas City, but to the region? Because they've been a good franchise for a long time. They just were not a great franchise at any point during that time. And now it looks as if this is their time. But what do the Chiefs mean to the region?
Probably more than a lot of teams in a lot of regions. I mean, the Midwest is a bit of a territorial mindset anyway. I don't necessarily prescribe to that, or subscribe to that, but that is kind of it's out here in the middle, we get kind of forgotten about, and we talk about the liberal media bias or the elite, the coast, all you care about is New York and L.A. But it goes beyond that. This team has been close a lot of times. For a team that hasn't won that many postseason games, there's been in that many postseason games in the last 30 years, there's been a lot of heartbreak. So what has happened, it isn't like the Bengals and the Lions haven't done anything, but they haven't really gotten that close. The Chiefs get there, and they've had good teams. They had good teams in 95 and in 97, and they had a terrible heartbreak. They had a great team in 2003. They couldn't make the Colts punt. They last year just kind of fed into that, and all year long, the fan base has thought, I know how this ends. And the first sign of trouble, regardless of how good they've been, the fan base has always felt, at least in my Twitter mentions, we've seen this before. I know how this ends. And I kept trying to tell people, you haven't seen it before with this kid. This kid's different. And if last year didn't prove it to you, this year should have. And to do what he's done the last 3 games, to come from 10 down, or 24 down, 10 down, and then 10 down on the fourth quarter, to win by double digits in all 3, Patrick Mahomes right now is the face of American sports in this country. And he plays for the Chiefs. He's not even 25 years old yet. So I think what this team has means to this city is a communal thing. But what last night meant was finally we can put some positive spin on something. Finally we can have a happy, healthy heart instead of always thinking, I know how this ends. Well, now I know how it ends. It ends in a freaking Lombardi trophy. And this city, this town needed it so badly with this franchise because it's been so close for so long. And at least the last 25 years, or 30 years, actually, to get this thing finally, it probably means more to this city than it does to most cities. 50 years is a hell of a long time, man.
Well, and as we've talked about, as you said, Kurtis, it's not, I'm a Michigan native. This is not the Lions. The Kansas City Chiefs aren't a good franchise. They're a really good franchise. They don't have a good fan base. They have a great fan base. And the fan base, unlike some other cities, Kurtis, the fan base really has never waned, right? I mean, there's never been a spot where the Chiefs weren't the most important thing in town, and that I think what adds to this to the rest of us when you watch it and you say they never left their side. The Bengals fans left their side. The whatever fans. I mean, you can't you can't sell at a Tampa Bay game unless they bring in a really good opponent, and then it's still 50-50 right now. Same with the Dolphins, and it's not like these teams haven't won Super Bowls and don't have history. Yet it's never waned in Kansas City, and that's just the type of fan the Midwest person is. So it is great to see. I want to go back, though, 3 years to the draft. When Mahomes was drafted, what was your show like the next day?
Celebration, because the show that I am on, the program with Sir and Petro, we've been banging the drum for a first-round quarterback for years, and that when that happened, he and I also hosted our draft coverage that night, and we're watching it, and they're at 10, or they're at 27. Also, we look up and, whoa, hey guys, their Chiefs are on the clock now. It's right after the Bengals took John Ross, I think it was, on the clock. Everyone, alert! And we're like, who is it? Is it Mahomes? Is it Watson? Who is it? And boom, there it was. And we're just so happy. It was like, oh, that's the guy. That's the guy. Now, we didn't know he'd be what he has been, but we knew he'd be pretty good. We knew he had all the physical tools. And so, yeah, that kind of was the first step of changing of the, I guess, the attitude of the Chiefs and the Chiefs fans. And we interviewed Carl Peterson earlier in the week down at the Super Bowl. He talked about why he never did that. He had some second-round guys that he tried out that didn't work out. But he said, unless I have a really, really high pick, I'm not going to use my pick on that. I'm going to use it for something else, and I'm going to go find myself a veteran quarterback who I know can win. Unfortunately, that he won so consistently that he never got that pick and was never in a position really to make that big jump forward. And they mortgaged a first-round pick or bargained a first-round pick, went from 27 to 10, took the guy, and now there isn't a team in football that wouldn't have made that move. And, as you look at this team going forward, the 49ers kicked the Chiefs' ass on both sides of the ball for 30 straight minutes last night, and Patrick Mahomes just shrugged his shoulders and led his team to a championship. And then the rest of the NFL had to have watched that game and thought, how in the world do you beat this guy?
Yeah, because the Niners also had done a pretty good job of, getting them to the turf. And, they looked as if, listen, if you're kicking their for 30 minutes and they only got about 7-8 minutes more to go, that you thought 30 was going to turn into 37 or 38. But for whatever reason, whether the Niners D just ran out a little bit of gas or what have you, one play started the avalanche. He's Kurtis Seaboldt, Sports Radio 810 in Kansas City. Follow him on Twitter, the letter K, Seaboldt, Seabold. T.
One final note, if I could. Are we? I don't know if we were heading out or not.
No. We're not heading out. So go for it.
Oh, good. Andy Reid is clearly the focal point. He's the visual guy, Big Red, Times Years, and all those things. But Brett Veach has to have a big smile on his face today because he's been considered somewhat unorthodox in the way he's gone about things. He's a young guy, doesn't have a huge football background, but the off season that he had was pretty amazing. And what we're finding out about him is his ability to identify NFL talent has really been something else. I mean, not only the Tyrann Mathieu and Frank Clark, guys like Mike Pennell, who he found on the scrap heap, guys like Stefan Wisniewski, who was out there for no money, the way he built the secondary with young guys. And they did all this without Juan Thornhill, who's going to be a stud for years to come. Kind of speaks to his ability to identify talent that most people don't see in it. And I think that's going to be really hugely important when Patrick Mahomes signs whatever deal he's going to sign in a year or so. So I just wanted to get
how big
all the Mahomes and Reid stuff. Brett Veach was a rock star this year.
Well, and Bieniemy not being interviewed by anybody doesn't hurt anything for next year either. There's no doubt there because he should more than likely have a job as a head coach somewhere right now.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at this whole thing and see what Reid did and what Bieniemy did, but also, they got rid of players, they got rid of good defensive backs that we all scratched our head, and this defense was a train wreck for 6-8 weeks. To see what they accomplished in the second half, to trust what was going to happen with Spags in that defense, and the fact that it did, I mean, there is a lot of trust in this organization, isn't there, Kurtis?
Sure, and you talk about the defense and where and Mahomes' kind of dovetail is October 17th in Denver. I mean, it didn't get as much publicity because that was the night that Patrick Mahomes' right kneecap went from the front of his knee to the side of his knee. And who could have imagined what the future held for this team at that moment? But that was the night that they got 8 or 9 sacks and beat Denver 30-6. And Steve Spagnuolo said this week that sacks don't necessarily mean a whole lot, except for the fact that they tend to make guys believe. And he felt that his team that night, off of that performance, their mindset changed to a degree. That they had a little bit more faith in the process, and that kind of helped them to move forward. And I think about November 10th in Nashville when they had that horrible game against Titans. But they kind of began to find things, and they got guys back, and Frank Clark got healthy, and they began to just react and play within that defensive scheme. And from that point on, they never lost again, 9 consecutive wins, and their defense was one of the big reasons for it. So that to me was a big deal. Getting that, because last time I was on with you guys was at the end of the AFC Championship game a year ago when their defense literally couldn't do nothing to stop Tom Brady and the Patriots. And last night they had to have 2 big stops to have any chance, and they got them both.
And all the changes they made in the offseason were designed essentially for the fourth quarter last night. Mm-hmm. They took a look at Bob Sutton. They took a look at that bend but don't break, defense, and they said this is not going to win us a championship. We have to do better than this, and they did. And the defense made plays. What is it like, not for you as a member of the media, Kurtis, but for your listenership to have Mahomes? I mean, George Brett was a really big deal right around 1980 when he was about to hit 400. And the Royals had a 10-year run there from 76 through 85 where, they were as good as any franchise in baseball. Mm-hmm. But it's been 2 generations since Kansas City has had an athlete who was remotely considered the guy. And Mahomes is now even bigger than what George Brett was 40 years ago because football is bigger now than baseball was then. What is it like What is it like to have the guy, and as you mentioned, this guy could very well be the face of this league for the 2020s. What is it like
Yeah.
having him?
It's hard to really put it in words. I mean, they have never had a guy like this in this town. I mean, George Brett was considered maybe one of the 30 or 40 best players to ever play. While he was playing, he's probably in the top 5 for a 20-year stretch, but he was never the greatest player in the game. And he was never the media. He didn't have all the things. And George Brett was a flamboyant, was a very colorful and charismatic kind of guy. But he didn't play quarterback in the National Football League. And we kind of looked back at the end of last year when that whole MVP thing was going on, and we thought the only precedent we could think of in this city for a player like that was Bo Jackson, somebody who was playing in this town, who was a media star across the country, who was the guy. And, Bo played baseball and was just beginning to discover his true potential when he hurt his knee on that sideline in Oakland in 1990, and it never really materialized. This guy's materialized, and to have the quarterback of your NFL team be the biggest sports star in the country is something that few cities ever have that. But we've looked around and thought about we've seen Brady, we've seen whoever the guy was at that time. Thought, wow, what must it be like to be that town and get to watch that guy all the time? And now this town has that guy, and I think maybe last night was one of the first times that I think they fully appreciated what the next 10 years are going to hold, because as great as it was, I don't think this town quite understood how great it's going to be. I think last night they know now how great it's going to be, because you get there and you win. What he showed last night in the face of what he had to face to get that championship tells you even more about him, I think, than we even knew as a player, as a tough guy, as a leader. The next 10 years there's no limit to it, and this town's never seen that before. So what he means to the fans of this city is it's immeasurable, and he has saved a generation of Chiefs fans from that purgatory of that they're going to blow it in the playoffs. But this is going to happen. As I spoke about earlier. We know how this ends.
And the other side, Kurtis.
We wrote a new ending last night.
Yeah, he's turned another generation of Chiefs fans into believing this is what's supposed to happen every year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other part of this, because for anybody that's probably in their young 20s to in below, they're looking at this in a completely different way than you're looking at it right now. And we had Soren on 2 weeks ago when we said how many, and he said, I think they'll go to 3 and win 2, including this one. And we talked a lot for the last 2 weeks. Aaron Rodgers went to 1, hasn't been to 1 since. Well, Mahomes got it done, and the sky is the limit. And we hope for you and for Kansas City that this is the start of something great, because we want to watch greatness. We've watched it for 2 decades in New England. Maybe we'll watch it for the next decade in Kansas City. Kurtis, thank you so much for your time this morning. Enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy all the time leading up to the parade. Hell, enjoy all the time leading up to next season, because it should be a lot of fun.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. This is so much better than the last time we talked, and I can't wait to see what the next week brings. The parade on Wednesday, and they're expecting more than 1 million people. It's going to be cold, but it's going to be red down at the Union Station. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
You bet, Kurtis. Appreciate your time. Kurtis Seaboldt, Sports Radio 810 with our buddy Soren Petro in Kansas City. Follow him on Twitter, the letter K, Seaboldt, SEABOLDT. Yeah, it'll be cold. It will feel very warm when that parade happens. Mark, quick anecdote. Longtime Wing sports anchor Brian Simon grew up a Kansas City sports fan. And I even reached out to him and said, hey, if I could find tickets to the Super Bowl, would you go? He said, no. I'm going back to Kansas City. I'm going to watch it with my brother. I'm going to watch it with my best friend. I literally have waited my lifetime to see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And he was texting after the game yesterday in which he said, outside of getting married and having kids, I can tell you this is just the greatest damn night of my life. And, like I say, Mark, we all deserve one of these. We all deserve a parade as a sports fan. Just one. This one. Anything else after that's gravy, but we all deserve a parade.